Howdy, everyone. John Sears, Enterprise Analyst here. Today, we're going to talk through our second training in the Microsoft 365 series, and we're going to talk about SharePoint today. SharePoint is a really important, really versatile tool for sharing content. And today, I want to talk about some of the things that you can use to really take your SharePoint sharing to the next level. It's a really powerful platform for sharing content, such as document libraries, including views and libraries. We can also build pages that create these really, really powerful, versatile websites to be shared either internally or externally. We're also going to talk about permissions because who can access it is almost as important as what's there. And then we're going to touch a little bit about how SharePoint and Teams play together in the space. So why should we build a page? There's a lot of temptation when we're working on a lot of different areas, maybe within an organization or on a lot of interconnected ideas of, well, we've got a new idea or a new theme or a different group, so we're going to go ahead and create a new SharePoint site. It's really easy to stand up new SharePoint sites. But what that'll end up doing is it'll create something that looks like this, a bunch of islands that are sort of underdeveloped. So a SharePoint site might have a document library, maybe a home page, but then usually nothing more than that. And so each of these little islands is their own little topics. Each one's kind of independently developed, maybe owned by different people. But what happens when you do that is you never really build much infrastructure. You really only have a document library that's unconnected and doesn't really touch anything else. Or maybe you've got a home page with some basic links on it, like a dashboard, and then nothing much else. What we're going to talk about today is the ability to build pages is like paving roads, building bridges. It's infrastructure. It allows you to move around a SharePoint site. And between the things that we're going to talk about as far as ways to enhance document libraries, as ways building pages, we can really build it out and have these fully fleshed out cities that make things easy to get around, maybe allow you to find the things you're looking for. Because if you've ever worked with an uncoordinated SharePoint strategy, you end up with these and you have to island hop to try and find maybe the particular document you're looking for. Whereas if you build out your infrastructure, you can really find what you're looking for. So let's talk a little bit about how to leverage SharePoint. So when you're building a SharePoint web page, maybe it's been 5 or 6 years since the last time you built one. It's gotten really, really easy. So it used to be that it was very unintuitive and you had to do some coding on the back end to make these websites work. But the new SharePoint page building is just like something you'd find out of a commercial website builder. So you've got your section controls over here on the left, where you can create new content, move things around, copy and paste, or even delete segments. You can choose from different types of content. So you can have links, document pages, activity pages. You can add all kinds of web parts to this that can be really, really robust, and it works with a lot of different connected systems. It can really be whatever you decide to make it. And you don't just have to have a home page. You can build pages within pages. You can build your own private website within these SharePoint sites. And based on what I've seen in various organizations, it really seems like folks are oriented on we've got a new idea, let's build a new SharePoint site, instead of just saying, okay, we've got a new folder in our document library that follows the same metadata and informational structure as the other content, but what we really need is a new page, which really helps people navigate and find things in that space. So get in here, try and create pages, use section controls, web parts, experiment with different types of content. There's a whole bunch more than even what's shown on here. You can see how much of the scroll bar is unused. You can customize things quite a bit in terms of whether you want a 1, 2, 3 column setup and determining how you want to do those breakdowns and even do shading. Is it as versatile as a full-on web page? No, not exactly. But when we start talking about document libraries, you'll really see where SharePoint shines. So there's a lot to a document library, and although it may come across as pretty simple, document libraries have a lot to them. So obviously you can create documents within SharePoint using Microsoft 365, web-based content creation, but you can also upload documents. Using this edit in grid view, you can open up a version of your document library that almost functions as Excel and lets you edit this metadata. And we're going to talk a little bit more about what a metadata is in a minute. But we are also talking about the ability to access folders within Windows. So you can customize your SharePoint document. And for folks that are more comfortable operating in classic Windows environment, they can access it directly from there without having to go online at all. You can also customize your views. This is something that's very heavily underutilized, and it's more of that infrastructure. So certain subsets of documents might be more relevant to other folks. Customize those views. You can either build out views to be shared publicly so that you can create a view that can be used by a bunch of people, or you can create private views. If you find there's a subset of documents that applies more directly to you, you can build a view to find those things more easily. And we can do things down in this data table, so we can find the author, we can filter and sort either through the various pieces of metadata or through descriptions. And when we talk about metadata, what is metadata? So metadata are words that describe. So it allows us to filter and sort to find documents. And it's really, really easy to do. All you have to do is add a column. Typically, I'll use a choice selection. So that way it lets me specify exactly what the range of options are. So you can specify those choices. So that when documents get uploaded, if the people that are using that document library are diligent about properly tagging their documents, it makes them much, much easier to find and search for what you're looking for. And utilized properly, metadata and tags can replace complicated folder structures, because I don't know how many of you have had this experience where there are folders within folders within folders, and you might have to navigate 4 folders down where you think something is, only to find, oh, there's nothing in that folder, time to go back up. Whereas if you operated in a world with fewer folders and more tags, it makes it much, much easier to find exactly what you're looking for. And this is a structure that we're utilizing here to great effect. When you're ready to create your views, and you can leverage tags further by customizing those filters and sorts in the views. Views are basically different visualizations for the data table that a document library is. So you can specialize the way you want to view it. So as a list, a compact list, or tiles, you can create as many views as you'd like, and you can create them either publicly or privately, as I mentioned earlier. Creating a view is as simple as giving it a name. Basically, put in the filters and sorts and get the search criteria that you want set up. Save your view, give it a name, and then you can choose right here whether you want to make it a public view or not. You can customize all sorts of things about your view. You can specify which columns are shown, which sortings are in effect, which filters. You can change tabular views. You can group by. So if you've got certain categories of work that you want to see together, you can do that. You can customize whether or not things are within folders or not. You can actually pull content out of folders using views. It's a really, really powerful tool and really brings document libraries into a more personalized space, so you can make the most of it. And for folks that you're working with that might not be capable of creating their own views, it's very easy to create a view for somebody and just make it public so that anyone can access it. When we talk about different people accessing documents, invariably we start talking about permission types. So permission types in SharePoint can be kind of tricky. For folks that have been around this space for a while, they might see it pretty consistently looking different almost on a yearly basis. But fundamentally, things can be sorted by people or groups. And we can have owners, visitors, members. We can also specify down to a folder level how we want documents to be available. So sites can have permissions, folders can have permissions. If you have the right permissions set up, you can create folders within SharePoint that are accessible to anyone, or you can limit them just to members, or you can limit them just to owners. So there's a lot of customizability, but it's not necessarily always intuitive, which is where Teams comes in. So Teams and SharePoint play very, very nicely together. It can really radically simplify access and permissions because all you have to do is manage who's on a team. And there are lots of ways to set up teams that we'll talk about when we talk about teams. It can also provide a space for community. All Teams sites are SharePoint sites. So when you create a team, you're creating a new SharePoint site. You can work within that space to provide a community, and basically it's a lens that allows you to focus in on certain areas. Again, more infrastructure for our site rather than just a new site. You can focus attention where it's needed and create a one-stop shop, so you can include content from your SharePoint site, yes, but also content that might be relevant to the work that you're doing for that particular group. You can also provide access to more applications that function within Teams and play very nicely with SharePoint. So things like Planner or Forms. And in fact, you need to have Teams enabled to access things like I just mentioned, Planner, Forms, and emailing groups comes in really handy with SharePoint. So consider when you're building a SharePoint site to create it as wide open as you can for access. And then when you have certain groups within the larger group that need special attention, instead of creating a new SharePoint site, consider, what if we utilize the document library with the metadata set up the way we already need it, and just consider expanding the infrastructure that allows them to navigate, set up views instead of a new document library that allow them access to the content that's most relevant to them, set up pages that have the relevant links they need, that is a central dashboard for the work that they need to do. And hopefully you built it in Teams, which makes it really easy to set up channels within it to access more of that content. All right, that'll about do us for SharePoint today. I want to thank everyone for attending this training, and have a great rest of your day.